Welcome to Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup. On today's episode, we have a very interesting discussion with Cassandra Gowing, who works at Radley, a designer company based out of the UK. Before that, she worked in a number of interesting companies, Hunter Boots, All Saints, and we'll discuss all of that on today's episode. I hope you enjoy.
You want to make the customer look good and feel good. So make it a social element. If it's not fun, it probably won't work. Test, see if it works. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. Move on.
Cassandra, thanks very much for joining the Memorable Marketing podcast. It's great to have you on here. Your experience and the companies that you work for, I think, are very interesting, but we'll get into all of that. Why don't we start by talking a little bit about your background, both personally and work-wise, and we'll take it from there.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. So I've got about 13 years worth of experience in the marketing industry, and that's been completely spent working in the fashion sector. So I come from a predominantly social background. So it just basically means that absolutely everything that I do as a marketeer is social first. And I'm always thinking about how the consumer is interacting with campaigns from digital channels, which is a little bit rarer. People tend to come from more of a traditional marketeer background or more performance. So I've always really kind of straddled that commercial and brand team. I most recently worked at Radley London, which are a British handbag brand, and I was hired by them for a repositioning challenge. Their traditional audience is a little bit of an older demographic and less fashion forward. So I was brought on to create a team to own all outward comms channels, basically, and really target more of a millennial audience. So utilizing press, social, influencers, retail activations, creating marketing campaigns, and within that, specifically looking at video content, which was something that was a little bit neglected previously. I was there for 2 years, and I've recently left to try and explore the world of freelance. Before that, I worked at Hunter. I've mostly worked for British brands, like really lovely heritage brands. Hunter are most known for their Wellington boots. I feel like in different regions, people call them something different. Rain boots, wellies. In, I think it's Canada, they call them gum boots. So trying to even localize that language is quite a challenge. So when I worked at Hunter, I was there for just over 3 years, and I owned all customer engagement. So that was focused on social, customer service, and then marketing campaign management as well. Hunter was a very different marketing challenge. Their focus was very much on exponential US growth. And that's something that shocks people quite a lot, particularly in the UK. We think of them as such a British heritage brand. They actually created in 1856 and one of the older British brands. So I was really focused on the growth in the US, but also they had such different customers that all came under the umbrella of that one brand. So whether you'd have your more traditional, older farmer customer to your more middle class dog walker, a millennial festival goer, or more of like a city fashion girl. So there was a lot of spin in place to ensure that we were constantly engaging with all of those different audiences, but knowing that we could create nuanced campaigns as well. And prior to that, I also worked at Charlotte Olympia, which is another footwear brand. I worked at All Saints, which is British clothing, quite well known for their ramskull tees and their leather jackets. I worked at La Perla, which is Italian luxury lingerie, and I also worked in-house at a PR agency as well.
Wow, a lot of nice brands. Let's start off with what you said about the Hunter company. I suppose you mentioned that you have quite a number of personas, different target audiences, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about how you would target those people, both in terms of media and messaging and stuff like this, differently from each other. How did you first, or the company first, discover those personas as well? Might be interesting.
Yeah. So in terms of first discovering the personas, they did a lot of research work, which was just fantastic to have, the different data in terms of exactly who our customer personas were. So that really helped. The difficulty came from we would often launch campaigns that would flip from one to the other. So we would be talking to a farmer and talk about our really kind of technical products. Everything would be shot in a muddy field, very much of that world. And then we would jump the next thing to like a Gen Z cool kids wearing flip flops at Coachella. And as a team would be going, why is our engagement all over the place? Because we were trying to keep everybody happy across all of the different channels. So one of the things that I worked super closely with both the brand team and the e-commerce team is identifying those different personas and what channels they actually sit on. For example, with Instagram, is the traditional farmer customer actually there? Are they following us? And are they engaging with us? And they might be there, but at the same time, they're not following and engaging and have the same brand loyalty that, say, a fashion consumer did. So we really kind of honed our bi-channel approach and thought more about tailoring where we were talking specifically about those different campaigns to different audiences. So yeah, it all comes down to identifying what the campaign is, who you're talking to. Does it need to be on every channel, or is it actually just an element of that campaign that needs to be communicated completely 360?
I see. And did you find that there were sort of halo segments? Like, for instance, if you do more work with the farmer, that makes the product more legit for the Starbucks yoga crowd?
To be honest, those ones kind of sat quite separately. But there was definitely more of a crossover with, say, our dog walking audience and then our festival goers. And then kind of overlapping all of that, there was just the weather. I've never checked the weather forecast so much in my entire life as the 3 years when I worked at Hunter. It got to the point where we actually we should have got a klaxon, to be honest with you, because we had a checklist. We knew if it was going to be raining, we knew what to turn on across all of the different channels. And we would really ramp that up specifically for festivals. For example, we'd launch like a weather countdown. If you're going to Glastonbury, here's what the forecast is looking like. Here's product that links through to all of those different sorts of weathers that you might experience. So there's some overlaps, but some would sit completely separate.
That's pretty cool. I'm wondering, like, through some of the programmatic work that we're doing, we find that there are DSPs, like programmatic vendors, that offer for sort of automated weather-based targeting, or even digital out of home, things like this.
Yeah, and that was something that we explored, and tested, and it worked so well. I mean, it's when you're marketing such a specific product, like for most people, like it's 20 degrees here today, it wouldn't cross my mind to wear rain boots. But if it was absolutely torrential rain, you want that brand to be front of mind. So exactly, it's about leveraging all of those different tools to, as much as an internal team, we needed to be reactive, we'd also partner with different organizations to take a lot of that heavy load off.
And was this a similar situation at Hunter, that you encountered at Radley, where they were like, okay, we have to, not going to say like youngify, but like we have to, implement more social, talk more directly to our customers, change our brand perception maybe a little bit?
I think it was a slightly different task because at Hunter, we were very happy to have all of those different personas. And if anything, that was very much our strength. We wanted it to be a unifying brand that you could bump into different people and they would be wearing it, because with Hunter, they have that cool factor that is kind of regardless of what demographic you sit in. Whereas with Radley, my focus was to try and introduce the cool element. Whenever I tell people that I worked there, I'd either get one or two things, either, oh, the brand with the Scotty dog, or my mum has one, sometimes my grandma, depending on who I was speaking to. Whereas my task was to encourage people like me, my age demographic, to think I'm looking for a really good quality handbag of a specific premium price point, and for Radley to be front of mind, because there's definitely a gap in the market there.
So then the assignment was more about, as you said, going to America. It's a growth market. What type of sort of strategic decisions did the company make to invest in there? Is there any specific campaign that comes to mind?
Yeah, so we did a lot of collaborations. I think the collaborations and partnerships, particularly when products involve, is a fantastic way to reach a new audience. So when I first joined the business, they launched a collaboration with Target. So the growth that came with that and the introduction of the British brand to a mass US audience was absolutely huge. So that was really key for us, and a lot of work that we did then, because Target had a lower price point than us, was really educate that new audience, that new customer, onto why you should then purchase our full price products.
Right. In a way, I guess brand advertising, it creates fame in the customer's mind, but it also makes them less sensitive to higher prices. I mean, that's one of the main purposes of advertising, right?
Yes, definitely so. So that kind of price resistance is definitely something that we had to do a lot of education over. And it was fantastic at Hunter because we had the product to back it up. You know, we have substantial product testing. We have had a warranty on our products as well. So, there was a lot that we could educate there that separated us from the specific Target collaboration.
And that cooperation with Target, I can't imagine somehow that someone higher up would go like, wait a second, this is not our, this doesn't really align that well with our brand.
So it was actually the opposite. Higher up were so keen for it. And everyone else, I think in the UK, because obviously like you hear of Target, but we don't have anything that's that similar. I guess maybe like Asda or something. I don't know. We don't really have that comparison, but they've done so many high-end designer collaborations that it's kind of broken down that particular hesitancy that you would have. And they just had absolutely huge reach. So that was, such an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And so after you got a lot of distribution and like perhaps the volumes went up, did you guys go into a different mode of marketing strategy? Was there a follow-up phase?
Yeah, so we then had to incorporate everything that we did as a British brand to consider it to be perceived from a US lens. So a lot of education in terms of reminding people about our heritage. If we were talking about a specific localized activity, we were always thinking about it being global as well. So yeah, we did lots of subsequent follow-up campaigns. Also like festivals was such a huge part of what Hunter's known for in UK and also in Europe. Whereas in the US, festival season just isn't as much as a thing.
Coachella, maybe.
Yeah,
Burning Man.
Coachella, but also those two are the last place you'd want to wear rain boots.
Right.
So thinking about the brand, how that could be front of mind there was a little bit of a challenge. And particularly when you've got global channels, how do you engage them in that? And the answer is, of course, celebrities. Everybody loves a celebrity.
All right. Okay. So what kind of celebrities were you working with?
So over the years, Hunter's always kind of prided themselves on working with various celebrities that go to Glastonbury. So every single year we'd work with gifting agencies and also host people at Glasgow as well.
One thing that comes to mind is sort of the Britishness of that product. Like Yorkshire tea. I don't know if you're familiar with. They did a huge campaign in the US as well to up their Britishness because people still associate tea with Britain, of course. Was there any sort of effort to Britify your brand more there as well, like to focus on that area?
Yes, 100%. And actually a lot of that work was also done at Radley, really kind of owning that British space. Within kind of Radley's opportunity, there was some US growth there. And it was once again a very different challenge because there was no kind of brand awareness at all. Whereas in the UK, Radley's a very well-known handbag brand. So we'd be within, say, an outlet space and there would be Kate Spade, Michael Kors, Coach, all very well-known US brands. So we would really ramp up that British element. I'm talking Union Jacks absolutely everywhere, really playing up moments such as the Jubilee and most recently the coronation as well, kind of really dialing up that Britishness. Also like Radley, its name is actually Radley London. So even that kind of London connection. And I really focused on that London fashion energy as well, that kind of it girl cool factor. So a lot of our campaigns were shot kind of street style elements in different locations in London to try and get that Britishness through.
Yeah, so you mean a phone booth and a bus in there, right?
Always get that in. Everybody loves it.
There's a great meme that I saw the other day where an American was looking at Big Ben, and then someone British shouted, "Oi, mate, you don't have clocks where you're from?"
Amazing. Yeah, iconic.
Neither here nor there, but yeah, I thought it was funny. So yeah, you mentioned Radley. How did you end up there, and what was the transition like?
Yes, so a very different brand. And also my output was quite different. As I mentioned, I was also responsible for customer service at Hunter, which was a very different challenge. So at Radley, I completely owned all of the different comms channels. It was a completely different task that I was focused on. But I always find repositioning and being, so focused on a specific objective that you can then measure and grow, such an exciting challenge. So it was a really fab 2 years there.
How did you sort of come in there? What was your mission?
So one mission that I identified relatively early when I was meeting with press was a response where press would, from Vogue or Elle, would say, "I never would have thought that's a Radley bag." And I kept hearing it a couple of times and I thought, that's my strategy. I actually want that. I'm going to grab hold of that. And that's something that I want us to embrace as a business. So that would actually be our marketing objectives when my team were coming up with different activations or social moments or press events. How do we get that mindset? Because that really encompasses the change of perception of the brand.
So it was product led, really,
Yeah.
and then sort of the job was really just to push that product out into to the world, right?
And to make it cool.
Yeah. So how do you do that?
Influencers were really, really key to do that. So I created an influencer strategy as soon as I joined, which was very much focused on brand awareness and content creation as a kind of a secondary. When I joined, it was very much about who can we have on our channel and ignoring the fact that actually our channels were quite small and we weren't speaking to anybody new. So I really wanted to shift the focus and prioritize piggybacking on their audience and getting that moment of, wait, that's Radley. That's the sort of bags that they're doing now. And then to kind of springboard off that and go to our website or our social channels or sign up to our newsletter. So influencers were super, super key. Social growth was really key as well. As I mentioned, I focused a lot on video content. And luckily that was just before Instagram pivoted to Reels massively. So I had a whole wealth of video content assets that we were able to maximize our channel reach as Instagram was going through those changes, which was really amazing. And TikTok was really integral as well, because it's kind of an open playing field. Any post could go viral. So the world's kind of your oyster there. You don't have to play as many engagement games as you do with Instagram. So I really kind of allowed the team to have fun and also show more internal who the team are. Like, look how cool my team look and the story of the brand wandering around London doing something fun. I think that storytelling adds a different dimension.
I can totally imagine. Was there any sort of pushback that you were getting? I know there was a strategic decision made to you to become younger and more hip and cool, and so social and content is a part of that. But was there any sort of like, okay, very nice, but how do you actually measure the effect of everything that you're doing? Like, likes are great, but how much extra did we sell last week because of this?
Yeah, 100%. And that's, completely the nail on the head. And I think that the best way to do a repositioning task is to go all in with it. Whereas a lot of what Radley was doing was to try and not alienate our existing customer. And our existing customer absolutely loved bags being covered in dogs, would not be fashion forward. So then it always made the task of trying to appeal to a fashion audience and convince them that this is cool if we were also trying to keep that more traditional audience super happy. So there was definitely some resistance there, particularly as all of the sales would naturally come from that core audience.
To begin with, right? It's kind of a slow ship. I think the saying like you can't be all things to all people, you sort of become nothing to no one. But that requires a lot of sort of political capital in the organization, a lot of trust, because as I said, that is a very big ship that you have to turn around, and for a while, the numbers will not look really great, I suppose. Uh, so yeah, talk us through how that process went, and perhaps how you sort of steered clear of such challenges.
Of course. So it came from kind of an origin point, really, working super closely with the design team who were creating these more fashion forward bags. So by building greater relationships with them, they wanted us to speak to that more fashion audience. It became more about, as I did at Hunter, identifying the different channels that those audiences were on. So for example, more fashion audience being on TikTok or Instagram and reading, more tier one press. So whether that's Sheerlux or Who What Wear versus our more traditional customer that would lean towards more This Morning or Loose Women or Daily Mail. So it all came down to us segmenting our audiences and segmenting our targeting based on the product that we were pushing.
Right. And how were you sort of showing initial results if the sales weren't there? Is there any sort of measurement related thing that you could talk about?
Yeah, of course. So reach was so huge for us. And because of the focus on video content as well, video views was another key metric. Reach and AVE of press was huge. We would apply some more performance style metrics to those comms channels. For example, working with influencers that would drive direct traffic, offering referral codes to measure uplift. And similarly, tools on social, measuring traffic, measuring conversions. We also did quite a lot of live streaming and testing promo codes within that. So taking more of a brand upper funnel activity and then measuring the success from that was really great. And we also saw real strength when we integrated the more brand content on more performance channels as well. So utilizing influencer content in performance ads, that would work really well. And then we would allow them to report on those different conversions that came from it. So once again, identifying the content and then the right metrics.
Yeah, sort of what I hear is repurposing a lot of content in different ways. And I suppose with a lot of fashion and higher end stuff, the trust is a lot higher when it comes to UCG. And just like repurposing that UCG content in paid media is, yeah, I suppose that's a very smart way to deal with things. You talked about how your mission at Radley was also sort of to reposition the brand in a way in people's minds, not just different creative or targeting different audiences, but sort of having in the zeitgeist that Radley is not your grandmother's handbag. Was there any sort of more qualitative research done to see if that was achieved?
So actually, just as I left, the research project started. So I'll miss out on the results for that, but I'd like to think definitely.
With those type of things, like I said, things move very slowly. If you think about like it's maybe more in my world, but like buying a really nice car. Like maybe when I was a kid, I saw in a car magazine like a really nice Ferrari or something like this, and then maybe one day I saw something on the street, and then I saw some ads, and I saw Formula One, and like 20 years later, I would buy a Ferrari. Like how do you actually attribute a specific marketing or advertising thing to that? It's like, what's the return on investment on having a mother. Like you can't really quantify it.
Yeah, that's a great phrase, by the way. I'm definitely going to steal that. It's exactly that. Like, it does take a long time. And I think that you have to be patient, particularly when you're doing a repositioning like focus. And I think that measuring the kind of the change in demographics on your channels is a really good way to do that, rather than just looking at pure kind of commercials. So we could already see that on our website and via our CRM, that our customer base was getting younger, but also we could see that shift on our social channels as well. So that we could see that our age were kind of changing slightly. But what I had to do, just as you mentioned, is really educate that a lot of those people are becoming fans of the brand, who will purchase when they, have the disposable income available, or, it's right for them to make that purchase. It's also been quite a difficult time from an economic landscape perspective as well. A lot of consumers are prioritizing things that you weren't able to do during lockdown or COVID: holidays, events, all kind of more experiential activity. Whereas a lot of people, myself included, actually did a lot of shopping in lockdown. Me and my laptop and my phone, we were best friends. So it's really about that slow burn, as you mentioned, how when you're going on those different events, do we have our brand at front of mind to convince you that this is the little something on top that you need for your event or whatever you do?
Sure. I guess also like very gradually, and then all of a sudden, all at once, it starts to come in.
Completely. Yeah. It's never really instant unless you have like a massive viral moment. It tends to be a slow burn in terms of you start to see a specific product uplift. You start to see purchasing behavior change slightly, like more people converting on mobile, more people coming from social or from press. Like it tends to be a slower move rather than kind of overnight, but you need to be patient with it.
You talked a bit about like content and social and so on. What did the rest of the marketing mix or advertising channels and so on look like?
I was responsible for influencers, press, social, parts of paid social, kind of very upper funnel. So that was focused on TikTok, and Instagram, Reels, Stories, and InFeed, and a little bit of Facebook upper funnel as well. The other social display, kind of more performance metrics were looked after by the digital team. And there was no other real advertising that was taking place when I was there. And that was something I was really kind of campaigning for, in terms of we need bigger reach in order to be able to see those conversions come through. It's all well and good speaking to a small subset of people, but from that, only a few will purchase. So we really need to dial it up and reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, and I think we see that in a lot of research that the number one job of brand creating brand awareness is actually just going as broad as possible, and creating reach amongst the biggest group as possible. Like applying the same things that we do to sort of acquisition marketing to brand advertising is just not a very smart way for companies to go ahead. So, in terms of the press side of things, PR, was there an element of kind of repurposing content, or was it like another channel that you distribute your content, or was it a thing in itself with a strategy of its own?
Yeah, so we had a separate press strategy. So that was really focused on repositioning. So working with, we split it up into tier 1, 2, and 3. So who are the really elevated titles that we want to be in? We want to be in Stella, we want to be in all of the broadsheets Sunday supplements. We want to be Vogue, Who, What, Where, Sheerluxe, Elle magazine. And then there would be our more kind of, a little bit traditional, but still a little bit of fashion. So in the middle would be kind of like OK magazine, Hello, a little bit more celebrity focused like Daily Mail. And then the third tier would be more traditional. So kind of like Woman and Home, more kind of like mum's world. So what we would focus primarily on is tier one, supported by tier two in terms of our press strategy. And every single season we had an external PR team. So we'd work with the PR team and we'd focus on the top press picks for that season. So we'd literally go through every single product that was available and pick, right, this is the one that we're going to go after. And we'd do that kind of 6 months, if not longer, in advance. I'd then make sure that those products would also be featured in all of our campaigns. They would then be the products which I'd work with the team to get dressed on influencers. We'd also gift to people. I'd make sure that then be in social content as well. So then you create your own halo effect. So you have that one piece of coverage that might come out, and then the consumer is then bombarded with the same piece of product featured via different mediums. So it was a separate strategy that kind of fed into the overall repositioning task as well. And then the other piece of that is just making it as easy as possible for the consumer to be able to find and purchase those products afterwards. I can't stand it if I see something really nice in Grazia. I go on the website and I have to spend longer than 5 minutes trying to find it. Like, it's that product that has got that top of funnel reach, whether it's a piece of press, an influencer's wearing it, out of home TV ad, should be on the homepage. We should make it as easy as possible for somebody to purchase that item that they've seen.
Yeah, in SEO, we talk a lot about search intent. So this is like, what is the actual intent of the person coming to your website or searching for that specific keyword, and to adjust the content to there. And I suppose it's kind of similar when you're doing an integrated campaign like you're talking about. It would be almost foolish not to take into consideration that a lot of people that are going to go to your homepage and Google you are going to be people that are looking for that specific product. So, but it just requires uh, like very good communication and like integration of the different teams that it's difficult to do at a lot of companies.
Completely. It's that cross department focus. And I think that that's from the off. So like, I would always, in every business that I've worked in, make sure that the e-com, the digital teams are fully aware of what products we're focusing, what we're going to be talking about, so that they had all of the information that they need to be able to get the conversions and not make it too hard for the consumer, and, put them in a specific as seen on press or worn by your favorite influencers category. Utilize, those same products in the newsletter that's going out that week. Add little roundels of them saying seen in Vogue. All of those different elements, which really just increase the consideration to purchase.
All right, just a little bit, because I would love to hear more about the e-commerce side of things. But before we go there, just a bit about press. Journalists and publications love to talk about the separation of church and state. Like, we don't let advertisers influence what we talk about in editorial. I see you smiling. The reason I'm asking is I think it's a like kind of not so dirty little secret that if you do big advertising campaigns, someone in the editorial team is going to more likely to pick up the phone if you have some story to push. Is that the case? And I don't know if you're allowed to talk about that here, but yeah, maybe talk about the process.
I don't know if I'm allowed either, but I think that you can kind of connect the dots in terms of, if you pick up a magazine and you see who's advertising at the front, chances are you will see their product being featured later on. So I think it, even just from the basics of like, the magazine then has a greater understanding of who your brand is. So then you're front of mind to them. So it's almost like treating them like a consumer. They have interaction with your brand. So if you've just done a big editorial with, I don't know, white plimsolls, and then somebody in the editorial team is doing a white plimsoll edit, you would naturally be front of mind. I think that was my very diplomatic way of answering.
No, no, that's clear. That's clear. I mean, we're not talking about lobbying for political changes or things like that. It's not the end of the world, I would think, but it does give larger companies a leg up. I guess the whole integrated nature of it, of your marketing campaigns, including PR and social and all the rest of it, just make sure that a lot of different stakeholders, including the press, including influencers, other influencers will have heard of you and that specific product. So I think that's a great approach to go with. I mentioned I would like to hear a bit more about the e-commerce side of things. Was that something that Radley was always doing? Did it piss off retailers? Is there a struggle internally between bricks and clicks? Spill the beans.
At every business I've worked for, they've always been prioritizing e-commerce, like as the growth comes from it. I think that there was quite an interesting split in terms of our customer. Radley had predominantly outlet store, like bricks and mortar stores versus online. So already there was like a different segment of customer that we could speak to there. So there was no real competition between the two. I think that nowadays people just like, you just want them to be closer on the same page, if anything, because you're trying to do the same task. Like, I don't really purchase in person anymore, but I'll still have a browse around the shops and then see that product in person and then go home and convert in the comfort of my own home. And I think it's the acknowledgement of that's quite a popular consumer behavior. You still like that tactile approach. And particularly when you're spending, a couple of £100 on an item, you want to make sure that the quality is there. So for me, the two working together is super important. But when you have a full price and an outlet strategy, it's slightly different.
Yeah, and I can understand. Yeah, just to that point about the interplay of bricks and clicks, it's like people have talked about the death of retail. And I think what is actually happening is the death of non-experiential sort of buying places. So really the ones that compete with the internet. The places that you see growing, like Apple stores or flagship stores of all kind, there seems to be a Louis Vuitton store in every town and city. They're there because they offer a certain experience and like a tactile experience that you wouldn't be able to give online yet, I guess. And then it works together with online as a purchasing outlet.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that that has to be the move forward. Like if you go down Regent Street and you go into like a semi-empty store and you just have it like a store assistant look a bit bored and ask if you want some help and you kind of just do the circuit and then leave. That's not an amazing brand experience. Whereas if you go in and there's different moments, I think that Coach do it really well. They have a whole kind of theatre element for personalization where you can watch somebody, you pick out all of the different leathers that you want to use, you pick the different font. Like there's an element of theatre there. And I think digital integration is really key. Utilizing it as a storyboard platform, exactly as you would say a discover page on your website, your store should be no different. I think that element's super, super important. I think that being able to purchase from some form of touchpad from a store is really key. I think that click and collect is super key. Make it, once again, it's all about just making it easier for the customer. Like, let's not overcomplicate things, but more traditional shop, we've moved on from.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Don't make me think and let me enjoy myself in the process.
Make it fun. I think that's literally, that could be applied to everything. If it's not fun, it probably won't work. Like we just have so many competing things in our world now. If there isn't value in it in terms of you're not educating me or you're not entertaining me, what is the place there?
Sure. And I guess a part of this is social media and the sort of sharing of those experiences as well. Wonder what your thoughts are about this, but just like I immediately have to think about there's an island called Bali in Indonesia. That entire place has been transformed by Instagram. Like that is the entire reason why people go there to take pretty pictures sitting on a swing and stuff like this. So that has a real world effect on the way that that island has been developed. And I suppose we'll see something similar in retail, in brands in general. What do you think?
Most definitely. I think that the shift has already begun a little bit. There's more that brands can do. So, the very simple quick win is, for example, you've got a UGC campaign, you have the hashtag and the call to action as a vinyl printed on the mirror. That's kind of like your base level one that you can do to incorporate social interaction. From that, have some sort of incentive. They win a shopping spree, they win some product, have their element there. But there's so much more that can be done as brands. There's nothing worse than going into a store and the lighting's terrible. It's like you're asking, hey, please don't take any photos here. Please don't share them on social. You want to make the customer look good and feel good. So make it a social element. There's a reason why, coffee shops in Mayfair are covered in flowers and are all millennial pink. It's because people want to share that moment. Apply that to your store. How can you have a brand moment that people want to share on social?
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with you. I think many stores don't really understand that it's not enough to just provide a place to buy something. It's not enough that it kind of looks pretty and smells nice. It should also have something different than any other place where you're at. Like, you have a normal cheese store and there's just a counter with cheese, or you go to a cheese store and then there's people like walking around in Dutch outfits and wooden shoes, and like there's a tulip field that you can take pictures with. Like, obviously that latter one is going to be more.
Costly. But there's ways to do it. I think L'Occitane, the beauty brand, they do a really nice way of making sure that their stores encompass the product. For example, they'll have like a big bunch of lavender and you can like take one home, and it feels interactive, even if it's just really nicely VM'd. Like you can tell that they're focused on brand and product storytelling from their store.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned Coach and Locaten. Are there any other brands that you sort of admire, or that you think we can learn something from?
Yeah, I think that they've done good recently. Marc Jacobs have had like a photo booth pop-up moment in some of their stores, which you can share directly to social, which is nothing new really, but it still works and you still see people kind of congregating around it. And then more fitness brands, I think, have really lent on the lifestyle element. And like Gymshark, they now do like classes upstairs so that you can go do a workout class. And then obviously you're there, you're browsing the products, you've got them in that mindset. So I think the coupling together of an experiential event that we know people want to go to, they want an experience, plus your brand storytelling, that for me is kind of win-win.
And how about the community? Because we haven't really talked much about that. And there was a lot of talk about that, like, what is 10 years ago or something like this, about how as a company you sort of need to build a community of like-minded people, and then you only have to sell them once and join in the community, and then you have a customer for life and all these great things. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I still think it's really, really key, that community element. And it's part and parcel with adding prestige to the brand. You want them to be proud to purchase that item. It's something that I think Glossier do really well, who are a beauty community. They've really kind of honed in on the millennial customer, and they've created basically a club to the point of they have these pink pouches that they send out all their products in. The amount of times I've been kind of working out, getting ready, and girls will be like, oh, we've got the same thing. Like it's like a bonding moment. And that's not even the product. That's just a piece of packaging that the product comes in. They're so recognizable as that. I think that they do a really good job at it. I think that Ganni also do a really good job as well.
Yeah, Lululemon, I was just offering as another example, to the point where I once, in a not so proud moment, went to a yoga class and uh, almost died a few times, but let's leave that aside. And the lady said, put the block on your butt, like where the Lululemon logo is. Like, she just assumed that should be an ad, by the way, but she just assumed that everyone was wearing Lululemon clothing, and it's just sort of the price of entry to become a part of this yoga lifestyle.
Of course. And then if you don't have that logo, you're like, well, I want to be part of that club.
The official outfit, the uniform for doing yoga. Yeah, and I guess if you can, as a company, get towards that, where you become the official product of something, I think it's going to offer a lot of profitable opportunities.
Definitely. And those brands that we've mentioned, like, yes, they have great products, but they're not the best products on the market in terms of their space. But they always focus on their values, what they stand for, and that community element. And that just makes you stand apart as a business.
Now, can every brand sort of build a community around their brand, their products?
Yeah, definitely. You just have to be focused on what your values are. What are you trying to say? And I think, look at the product that you're trying to sell and springboard off something that you as a consumer would want to relate to. Before I left Radley, I was going to set up a book club, because whenever I'm an avid reader, and I will pick my handbag for the day based on what size book I'm reading at that time. So if I've got a bigger bag, it means I'm reading like A Little Life and I need a big tote. Or if I've got like a little Penguin classic, I can get away with a clutch bag. Also, I live in London. I spend 45 minutes to an hour commuting each way. I need to be able to read. And I integrated that kind of mindset into our video content, and every single month it would be the best performing video content. Super, super simple, under 10-second reel. Model walks through a coffee shop, close up of the bag, get out a book, and it would always be the book that everybody's talking about that month, whatever, TikTok's gone viral for. So there's that kind of relevancy there as well. And also that then is a value. Hey, I like this book. If you like this book too, we might be friends. That creates an element of community. Model reads the book, has a coffee, puts the book in the bag, lovely close-up detail of branding, she walks off. Every single month, it would be top performing. And then we started to see some insights that all of our customers, whether the newer demographic or the old, loved reading. So that was going to be my next project, to actually start a book club, which is having a real moment at the minute.
So just with regards to those videos, I suppose you're showing use cases, but even more so, you're providing an excuse to buy a new bag.
100%. And showing USPs of the product without being like, here's a pocket, here's a clasp at the top, like a trainer advert with like arrows coming out of it. You naturally see all of those moments in under 10 seconds, and you get an element of community and who they are as a brand. Oh, wait, they're reading Dolly Alderton. That means that like it's a millennial book and it connects with, that's going to be a TV show that I enjoy watching. There's so much more than just a model putting a book in a bag.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it has sort of to do with empathy and like a recognition, like not a recognition, but like showing that as a brand, you're like them, like your target audience that you're talking to. And I think that creates a connection that you wouldn't be able to get from stock footage and bland models doing bland things.
Totally. I always say that it should be aspirational. So there's an element of connection, like I can be that person. It should just be slightly out of reach. And the way that you get to that level is essentially by buying the product.
Very sneaky, very sneaky. All right. We'd like to do one question that we ask all of our guests here. And that is some time for some advice. The question is, what can you advise others starting out in your industry? What perhaps would you advise your younger self just starting your career?
So I think that constantly watching what other brands are doing is really important. But I've mentioned a lot of brands within my kind of vertical, but I also think other verticals are really, really important. I've found some of my best inspiration by looking at brands that are in completely different sectors, for example, like homeware or tech. and actually going, right, there's this campaign. What are they doing? How can I take those learnings and apply it to my sector? And then you actually end up doing something quite different and quite new. I think particularly in the landscape and the world that TikTok has created, failing fast is something that's really great. That was something that was obviously created by Facebook, very early doors, but I think people don't really have a choice now. I think just test, see if it works. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. Move on and just be as ideas based and creative as possible.
Does the same apply to sort of the personal career of people? Like, should they perhaps try lots of different things and see if it's for them?
I mean, I've worked in various brands like over the past 13 years. And for me, that's right, because I feel like every single role that I've had, I've learned something completely different. I'm quite picky with the brands that I work for. So I want to work with brands that I'm passionate for, because that just motivates me even more. But also I want to ensure that part of my career, I've learned something specific that I can really take on to the next adventure. So yeah, I think always have fun as well. Like if you lose that, then it's time for a new challenge.
That sounds like a good motto, Cassandra. On that note, we'll call this a day, and I would like to thank you very much for this super interesting conversation. I learned a lot, and we'll hopefully catch up again at some future time.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
So after every podcast, we have a little chat with Val to see what she thinks. What did you think about our conversation with Cassandra?
Cassandra has a great track record working for fashion brands, and she met different professional challenges during her career. Particularly, I liked how you called a challenge the Mating Hunter, which is the Britishness of the product, when she was tasked to introduce a truly British brand to a United States audience and to make it stand out among Kate Spades and other brands. And another challenge, she needed to reposition the Radley bags in people's mind to make it attractive to younger people and not their moms or grandmas. And she did it, among others, by focusing on video content on Instagram, TikTok, and their website, and of course by working with influencers and making collaborations.
Yeah, I suppose in this case, quite literally, the medium is the message. Like, they wanted to get a little bit younger, to get rid of the grandma image, and big part of that is not just like the messaging that you put out, but also where your target audience sees you, right?
Yeah, and it's also essential to build some community in the fashion industry, fans that are in love with your brands, and also to make some fun, because if it's not fun, it wouldn't work.
Well, I liked it a lot. We need to have more fun on this podcast. No, I thought it was a very fun conversation. So, box ticked. Thanks a lot, Val. Until next time.
Until the next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We have a large number of interesting conversations like this one in our YouTube channels or on your favorite podcast player. For the future, feel free to like and subscribe so you get notified when we have new episodes out. And we'd love to hear from you, so get in touch in the